Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing? Sorry, didn't mean to cut somebody off.
No,
Good,
you're
just
fine.
trying to survive the wind.
Oh, yeah, I heard it's terrible. I'm out of town right now, but I heard it's like people's power's out.
Crazy. Crazy.
Hi, Amy. We're so thrilled everybody's here joining us tonight, even with all the catastrophic power outages and wind.
Yeah, we heard from a few people that they had no power, and so they're not able to come, but we're recording.
Yes, we are. And I feel like people are going to have the opportunity to just kind of like come in throughout the night. So since we are on a tight schedule, I'll just go ahead, jump right in and get us started. Hello, welcome. Thank you everyone for attending Headliners tonight. Some people might already know me, but for those of you who don't, my name's Brittany Eslary. I'm one of the newest additions to the philanthropy team at Austin Pets Alive. And I am just so happy to be hosting and get to see everybody tonight. So we're really excited to share. I'm sure you all have gotten a lot of recent email communications, things from APA. So you may already know that it is an exciting time right now. There's a lot of news, a lot of optimism around the future, and there will be time to get into all of that. But I'll start with just a couple intro things and housekeeping things. We definitely are looking to have the it be conversational and fun, and encourage everybody to join in, share stories, share questions, ask us anything. You can jump on screen, or if you're more comfortable using the chat, that's fine too, or doing the raise your hand option in the reaction section of Zoom. So we definitely welcome all that. Some of you who are partaking in goodie bags, I also encourage you to go ahead and pop a cold one. Have a little bit of fun tonight. And yeah, so really, we've got a couple of different folks coming on to like speak, present things, but we definitely want to welcome everybody to come on screen and ask questions and be a part of it tonight too. So we're really excited to get started. And our first introduction for the night will come from our board co-chair, Germana DeFalco.
Thanks, Brittany. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is exciting. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about myself, and I'm sorry, I am getting pinged. I was like, never know how to mute all that. But so yes, I've been co-chair for just a few months, but have been on the board for a long time. And I actually joined APA back in 2009. And I've been asked to share the story for that. It's a little dark, so prepare yourselves. I was building a home and we were clearing a lot, and the foreman shared with me that there was a mulch pile that one of the guys in equipment drove over, and Mama Cat had decided to put a nest in there. So, you know, I was appalled that that had happened through something that I was trying to get done. And I tried to figure out how to possibly atone for it. And my sister and I had been walking along South Congress like a week or two before, and I had seen one of APA's adoption counselors with some pups out on SoCo. And so decided to reach out to APA to see if maybe I could put some positive vibes back into the animal world. And the next month I attended volunteer orientation for APA, and basically have been with the organization since. So I started out as a foster, dog and cat foster, ended up specializing in pregnant mama cats and then medical cat fosters. I led the volunteer team for a while. I responded to online inquiries for animals for a while. When we moved to the Town Lake Shelter, I helped revamp the dog kennels. A few years ago, I got qualified to walk our dogs. So basically just tried to dive in wherever I thought I could help out the most. And it's been honestly one of the things that I'm most proud of in my life. It's been so rewarding, and it's just an amazing organization. And so when I was offered the chance to become co-chair and help Rusty, who had run the board for so many years, kind of split the workload a little bit, that was just an amazing opportunity for me. So I grabbed it, and it's, I mean, as you will see, just a very exciting time to be involved with APA. So it's been amazing. So real quick, I want to thank Subaru for sponsoring this event. And then without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen, who has been a source of absolute inspiration for me. So I know you don't like me saying that, but it's true. All right, there you go, all yours.
Well, thank you. And I just want to express my gratitude to everybody here for spending the evening with us. We really appreciate it. Just getting the chance to talk and have the ability to have some back and forth communication and conversation. So we hope you'll take advantage of this as really an open format. And I'm just so grateful for Germana joining our board and being our co-chair with Rusty. And Rusty is very sad to not be here tonight. He was one of the people without power, so he could not join us from his home. So he's going to try to step in if possible, but if he doesn't get his power back, we won't be seeing him tonight. Anyway, I was asked to just share, reflect a little bit about where APA is right now. And as you know, APA's mission has been to eliminate the killing of pets in shelters. And we've always done that by trying to find the gaps in the systems that exist and trying to fix those systematic gaps, as well as save the actual lives of the animals that are dying because of those systematic gaps. And in Austin, we've been, I guess this year is now 10 years of being a no-kill city, which we're extremely proud of. And we know there's still a ton of work to do, but it's still such a huge accomplishment for Austin to be in a place that is no longer in danger of having to kill animals because of space. And it doesn't really even matter what the percentage of live release is at the shelter. No animal is at risk because of just not having a place to put them. And that's pretty big. And as we're spending more time with other communities and trying to really understand the landscape around us, it's even more remarkable to think about how Austin has been able to achieve no-kill and stay a no-kill city for the last 10 years. And really that's because of people like you supporting the work that we're doing and supporting the innovation that goes into that, and the sometimes not really even knowing where we're headed exactly at the moment, but knowing that we're doing it for the right reason, and we're trying to get to the best possible outcomes for animals in Austin and everywhere. And over the last couple of years, we've spent time really focusing on a strategic plan, which we'll spend more time talking about with some of our speakers and in the question and answer portion. But I'm excited to share that with you if you haven't already seen portions of it. And then, but before we get into that discussion part, I want to share a video that our team created for you for tonight. And it is talking about some of those accomplishments over the last year and also about the future. And so much is at stake right now with our future. As you know, if you've been following our emails and wondering what's happening next, we're all sort of wondering what's happening next. But the truth is that it doesn't matter. No matter what happens, it's going to be the right thing that happens for APA. And we're excited about the future. We know that we can save lives no matter where we are. And so without more conversation about that, we'll go ahead and share our video.
Perfect. Bear with me, y'all. I am going to share this video.
Let's remind ourselves of everything we've accomplished together this year. In February, Winter Storm Uri ravaged Texas, leaving millions, including our Town Lake Animal Center, without power. APA jumped into action. to not only protect the 120 plus pets we had on site, but to assist the pet owners in our community. Our past program stepped in more than ever before, doing whatever possible to keep people and their pets together. By March, our transport program was in full force, rescuing over 1,000 pets out of Texas shelters to partners across the country. Using our resources to connect with shelters nationwide allows us to save more Texas pets from euthanasia lists. Claire Callison from American Pets Alive spearheaded this venture, making the idea of a no-kill state a possibility. In just 10 months, we've also accomplished so much right here in Austin.
We just couldn't do what we do on our own. I hope there's no one that interacts with APA that doesn't understand. APA is a conduit. We're a link between rescues, shelters and our community. Part of APA's mission is to help and to educate. It doesn't mean that every animal that needs saved in Austin needs to come through APA. It doesn't mean that every animal in Central Texas or beyond needs to come through APA. It's how we can help communities, help people more locally. Little Velvet here, it doesn't look like it, but it's very vulnerable. She's losing weight and we need specialist care for her to be able to give her the best chance at growing up big and strong. But kittens with Pan-Luc, kittens with Khaleesi, kittens with ringworm are all more challenging to find fosters for. And as we move forward and help our fosters, give them better support, better resources, and make them better able to help us with the most vulnerable kittens in our community.
These puppies, they're just starting out and they got kind of the raw end of the deal by getting parvo and not having vaccines, and that's just where humans, failed them. Who knows what the circumstances, it's no one's fault, but we can get them better and they can have a chance at a healthy life, which they wouldn't get in another shelter. They'd be gone and they wouldn't have an opportunity to find a family and live a happy puppy dog life, which they deserve. We have all of our kennels full, but we have 5 foster homes that can take these dogs that aren't that sick. Then we have 5 kennels. We can save 5 lives from a shelter that's going to euthanize because they have nowhere to put these dogs that have contagious virus. This is the biggest parvo program in the country, and you get to be a part of it, and you get to be back here, and you get to see dogs' lives get saved. Literally, they're lateral, and then you work with a vet and you treat them, and they're, whoop, hello, I'm up again. And that is the high that we live for, because we're this dog would have been dead in 10 seconds if we hadn't gotten to it. And now look at him, he's adopted, he's in a home, and the adopters are posting on Facebook, look at our dog, all grown up, and you're because of us, because of the vets, because of Dr. J, we get to relish in that we helped that dog become who they are.
As we look to expand our no-kill mission statewide, we need our voices heard now more than ever.
Austin Pets Alive is a visionary, not only because of the innovative practices we employ at our shelters, but also because we understand that government and policy impacts our operations just as much as the programming we put in place. And so everything that we are doing from a policy perspective has a direct impact on every single animal that comes through our doors. All of the animals that you foster, all of the programs that you support, and we are so grateful to be able to continue to do this work, but we know we can't do it without you. I am sure that you all have heard so much about the land negotiations, our future at the Town Lake Animal Center, and the action items we have already shared with you for Austin City Council. Our agenda item is going to be on the November 4th council agenda. It's going to be the Austin Pets Alive resolution. This is really our last chance to make sure that we have a home in the center of Austin. As you all know, Austin Pets Alive has more fosters than any other animal welfare organization in the state and maybe even the country. They depend on us to have a central location so that they can access medical care, behavioral assistance, and all kinds of foster care support. And so to have a location at the center of the city is really important, not only to us, but also to all of you. And so your advocacy over the next couple of weeks is going to be huge. And we are just really grateful for everything you've done so far. We hope that you will continue to be our allies as we lead up to this very important vote on November 4th that will impact the future of Austin Pets Alive and the animals that we love.
Yay. So up next is going to be Kristen Hassan from American Pets Alive, giving us a little 411.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. I've gotten the chance to meet many of you, but in case I haven't, my name is Kristen Hassan, and I direct American Pets Alive and all of the national and international endeavors of Austin Pets Alive. So tonight I'm going to talk very briefly about 3 things, and I hope that you will be surprised and learn things you didn't know about Austin Pets Alive. So before I get started, I just want to tell a very brief story about the impact you have all made on my life. I worked in animal welfare, leading large government animal shelters for about a decade. And the first shelter I ran was in Fairfax County, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And at the time running this shelter, it was considered a progressive, nearly no-kill shelter. However, we euthanized every feral indoor cat, every pet with distemper or parvovirus. When a cat got colici at our shelter, we euthanized every cat for fear of what would happen if we didn't. We were told by veterinarians to euthanize every single cat in the shelter. And so we were euthanizing these animals because we didn't know better. And what sticks out to me about that is, even though this was just about 10 years ago, we were attending all the national animal welfare conferences. We were learning the best practices, but the best practices left behind all of these pets. And I got to see Dr. Jefferson speak at a conference in 2013 about saving the lives of these animals. And at the time, I couldn't believe it or imagine that anyone was saving a pet with distemper. To us, that was like rabies. It was so terrifying. I couldn't believe that anyone was saving a parvo puppy. We didn't even know that was possible. And so I, shortly after that, actually took a job at Austin Animal Center to come and learn from what was happening at Austin Pets Alive, because I just couldn't believe it, and had the opportunity to be here in Austin for 2 years, running the Austin Animal Center, working alongside Dr. Jefferson and Austin Pets Alive, and learning all of the secret sauce that makes APA so special. And what I learned over those years is that Austin Pets Alive is the only organization of its kind in the world. There is nowhere else in the world that you can go and learn to save the pets that you can save at Austin Pets Alive. And when you walk through Austin Pets Alive, maybe some of you haven't been there in a while because of COVID, or you just haven't had a chance to come by. But what you might notice is that every single pet in that shelter is the collateral damage of the animal welfare movement. They are all animals, from tiny kittens to puppies with broken legs, to perfectly healthy, friendly pets that just were going to be euthanized for space. Almost every single pet at Austin Pets Alive is a pet that wouldn't have had a chance without APA. And you all are what make that possible. And it is, so up until a few years ago, people in Austin knew about Austin Pets Alive, and there was tremendous local pride in the fact that Austin is still the largest no-kill city in America after all of this time. But most of the world didn't even know it was possible. And so American Pets Alive, starting a few years ago, started to train and teach students from all over the United States about the work that APA is doing to save these animals. And really, over a very short period of time, the word has spread. And suddenly, a nation that used to euthanize virtually every ringworm kitten, now it is really considered abnormal to euthanize a ringworm kitten. People that didn't even know you could save an indoor scared cat would never think of euthanizing one now. And people that thought that any dog that didn't come to the front of the kennel and wag its tail should be automatically euthanized, those dogs are saved now in shelters. And that is largely the work of Austin Pets Alive. In the United States, we've gone from a national euthanasia rate of 15 million pets a year to just 1.5. And we are the organization that's going to get us the rest of the way. And so what you've done in Austin has been a beacon of hope for the rest of the nation. And so you probably know that your investment has saved so many animals in Austin and probably have a lot of pride in that, but you may not have known that that investment has also saved so many tens, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of animals all over the United States and now the world. So what we do at American Pets Alive is two things. We take the Austin programs and we teach them to people all over the country. The other thing that we do is we try to provide something like, it's a little like Doctors Without Borders. It's a little like emergency aid. We go into the communities that are the hardest hit, where animals have no chance to get out alive, and we save them. And I'll just tell one brief story about that. This summer, one of our partner shelters, facing severe staff shortages and a high intake of animals, the quality of care was so low that animals were actually starving in their kennels in a shelter. And cages weren't getting cleaned for days and days, and the conditions were some of the worst we've ever seen. And so our team went in, got as many animals out as quickly as possible, and then provided the guidance and leadership so that that wouldn't happen to future animals. And that's the work that we do every day, going to the hardest places in the US. Some of these shelters, they don't even have indoor kennels or really plumbing. They are so rural. And so our work is to go to those spots where we are the most needed, where animals are imminently at risk of euthanasia, and to help save them and get them out. And some of them come right here in Austin. You may own a pet that you've adopted from Austin Pets Alive who was saved through our transport network. They also go all over the United States. Once COVID hit, we recognized that things were going to change for companion animals in the United States. Over my past 10 years and most of Dr. Jefferson's career, we've been focused on getting pets out once they enter the shelter system. But once COVID hit, we knew things were going to shift because we knew that people were going to struggle with economic impacts of COVID. And so at that time, we started the Human Animal Support Services Project. The goal of Human Animal Support Services is to keep pets and people together. And if you sort of think about the worst day of your life, you maybe need to be hospitalized, you have an emergency crisis, or for some reason you can't get to your pet, or somehow you are faced with surrendering your pet to a shelter. In the US, there's really no safety net for people. So even a minor thing like a vet bill that they can't pay immediately, the only option the vast majority of Americans have is to surrender a pet to a shelter. And if you've ever been to an intake lobby, I spent 10 years in intake lobbies in government animal shelters, and they are full of people who are crying and are the saddest people because they love their pets, and most of them do not want to be faced with this impossible decision to give them up. And unfortunately, up until COVID started, we really didn't have a way to help them other than having them surrender their pet, which permanently and completely separated from their animal. And so the work that we've been doing since COVID is based on the Positive Alternatives to Shelter Surrender program of Austin Pets Alive. Are any of you familiar with that program? PASS is it's simply a Facebook page with a little bit of volunteer support and a little bit of staff support. But what we do is we help people who are in crisis stay with their animals, because we know that the bond between people and animals matter. A recent survey, national survey, showed that 98% of pet owners value their pets just as much as they do their human family members, and they consider them to be family. And so our work is to try to keep people and their pets together. And we have seen so many situations where people would have lost their pets, but we were able to keep them together. So a lot of the work we've done over this past year has been around that. And one quick example is when COVID hit, we built nationally programs so shelters could board or provide foster homes for people who were hospitalized due to COVID. Had we not built those, all of those people, thousands and thousands of them, would have had to give up their pets and surrender them if they didn't have friends or family to care for them. And so in building these safety nets, we have worked with about 500 animal shelters around the US and in 20 different nations, with about 5,000 animal welfare professionals and people from other fields all coming together to say, how can we keep pets and people together? And at the heart of all of this is the ethic of Austin. And I'm just going to close out by going back to that because it's probably the most important thing that I'll say tonight. There is no other organization in the US, in the world, like Austin Pets Alive. Your support of Austin Pets Alive has meant that animals who absolutely would not have had a chance, and in most places still do not have a chance to live, know that they're safe and know that they're loved and cared for, and know that they're going to be home on somebody's bed, on somebody's couch, and that they're not going to die in a shelter alone. And that is really remarkable, considering that now we've taught hundreds and thousands of people from all over the US the same things, that same ethic of life saving, that every animal's life is worth saving. Every animal is worth it. There shouldn't be such a thing as this animal's too sick, or this animal's too young, or this animal's too old. Those shouldn't be statements that we have to say in shelters. And thanks to you at Austin Pets Alive, we never have to say those things. We get to save every pet. And so I want to say on behalf of the American Pets Alive and the Human Animal Support Services team and the millions of animals all over the country and now the world, that your investment has helped save. Thank you. I know you'll probably never know your impact, but we all do, and we see it and we hear it and we feel it every day. And thanks to you, animals all over the world are alive that wouldn't have otherwise been.
So if anyone has questions for Kristen, fire away. I have one if no one else does, so I'll get things rolling. But Kristen, what do you see as the benefit of this national work to APA as an organization?
Well, we sit in a nation where there are a number of national organizations helping to save animals, helping to do good work. But Austin, for the past more than a decade, has been the thought leader. We have been leading the charge, and we have been taking a firm stance that no animal should be left behind when it comes to life saving, that every animal should be brought along. And it's important as we move forward that Austin continues to carry that message. Because like I shared with you at the beginning, I didn't believe those animals could be saved. Like I didn't even know it was possible despite going to all those other conferences and talking to veterinarians. And so it's critical that Austin remain the heart of life saving in the United States, because we are the organization that's going to show people how to mend that broken leg, or to set that pup up with a wheelchair. And because of that, I think we're the only organization that's in the position to protect and save those animals all over. And for Austinites, you can be so proud that you are the hub of the nation and the world. People travel from all over the world to come and see the work happening at Austin Pets Alive. They're coming all over the world. And that is a benefit to Austin in a number of ways. But it also keeps Austin animal welfare work at front and center in national and international animal welfare. I guess the one other thing I would want to add to that is we worry as the world gets even more and more complex and challenging. We are all thinking about how to sustain this long after any of us do this work or can protect animals personally. And if we want to sustain this, we have to make it the norm. And so when we talk about Austin being at the heart of all of this work, it's important because we help make this the norm. And we're the only organization that will do this, so that there will never be a backslide. We won't ever go backwards and say these animals don't deserve to live. And for that reason as well, it's important that Austin remain the leader in these national and international conversations.
Hey, are any of the vet schools, we get messages out to them so that maybe the younger vets that are coming out have a different view of things, more enlightened?
Dr. Jefferson, do you want to respond to that?
Sure, I know you can respond to some of that too with your work in Arizona. The veterinarians, the younger veterinarians are much more in tune to what is happening to people and their pets together. Access to care has turned into a really big issue. Really, there's nothing, and you guys may not know this, but veterinarians have kind of purposely left behind people that can't afford the highest standard of veterinary medicine. And so a lot of, and it's an industry decision to try to get away from the past of being paid with like cookies instead of real money for the work and the education that goes into being a veterinarian. But the problem is that there's, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 3/4. Is that right, Kristen? Something like I'm butchering it, I'm sure, but a huge number, I believe it's the majority of Americans cannot afford medical care for their pets to the standard that we probably all enjoy on this call. And that is, that's a big problem, and it's a huge contributor to why animals are ending up in shelters. And the great news is that younger veterinarians are understanding that, and they're understanding that their industry needs to do something better, needs to do something about it to help people keep their pets. The other thing that I think is happening right now in veterinary medicine is that there's veterinarians are the profession with the highest suicide rate of any other profession, and nobody knows exactly why that is, but I think that it's because veterinarians are charged with euthanizing animals for money when people run out of money. And it's the same thing that's happening in shelters all over our country. And it's not the humane thing to do for people or for animals. So that's, I think there's been sort of a reckoning. There's a shortage of vets, so that's also problematic, but maybe that'll open up doors for technicians to grow into RN type roles or physician's assistant type roles, which the industry has kept really prevented any kind of growth in that sort of middle professional layer. But it's now turned into a huge problem during COVID because everybody wants care for their pets.
Shelter
All the
medicine,
people who can't afford it, yeah.
and shelter medicine is currently the most pursued track, I believe, #1 pursued track in veterinary school. And so people are wanting to be shelter vets. Part of the challenge that we've dealt with in shelters is they're not taught to save those animals either. And that's been a huge issue. A lot of veterinarians are coming to Austin Pets Alive. When I ran the municipal shelter in Tucson, Arizona, which has an intake of about 20,000 pets a year and a very small human population. We actually sent our veterinarians to Austin to learn from the Austin Pets Alive vet. And when they came back, we became the second highest life-saving government animal shelter in the country behind Austin Animal Center. And we did it just because our vets learned they could do this work. They weren't taught that before. And they were taught that they didn't have to provide gold standard medicine to every animal in order to save them. And so we need to do a lot more of that. And through some of the American Pets Alive work, we are training veterinarians around the country. But the education they get with us is quite different than they get in potentially in other vet schools.
Well, Amy has another question about vets. Amy, do you want to speak up or do you want me to read it? She might not have the ability. So Amy wants to know if, do we have any involvement with promoting shelter medicine in veterinary schools?
Yes, we're working with, there's about 4 really high quality, there are 4 universities that are involved in shelter medicine pretty deeply. They've also gone through their own movement in that, and that's where the kind of gold standard even gets applied to shelters through that. And they're working with us to try to infuse what the industry is calling incremental care. So instead of, it's something we do every day at Austin Pets Alive, we work, if we have an animal with a broken leg, the first thing we're going to do is give them pain medicine, see if they can heal with a splint, maybe even just cage rest. And we don't progress to surgery unless it really needs to go to surgery. So we can conserve our resources for the ones that really need the most money spent on them, and the ones that don't, we can save a lot more animals if we can be conservative about our approach. But shelters have never learned how to do that. Shelter veterinarians, they're looking to us to provide a lot of that help and support. And we're actually setting up an internship and externship process with Lincoln Memorial University. It's one of the newer veterinary colleges that doesn't have its own teaching hospital. So they have to spend their whole, I think it's their 3rd and 4th year on the road working in different environments and with different veterinarians, and we'll be part of that process along with the Pathway corporate veterinary centers here in Austin. So that's pretty exciting. And then we're also helping to create that curriculum for those middle professionals that we were just talking about. And that'll be a new course that's going to be offered this next year, so that we'll have our first crop of basically physician's assistants for veterinarians. So the universities that are the most involved in shelter medicine are University of Wisconsin, UC Davis, Cornell, and University of Florida.
Regarding I know there are some questions in the chat about Town Lake, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. The question regarding will the negotiations impact the national work? Not really. The collaborative project that is Human Animal Support Services, while it draws its inspiration from the work of Austin Pets Alive's past program, it is a now international collaborative, and it's really powerful. It's being piloted in city after city around the US, from Los Angeles to Atlanta to Detroit to Washington, D.C. The major US cities, with the exception of Austin Animal Center, are piloting this program. Probably the most unfortunate piece is that Austin Animal Center didn't decide to pilot it. And so they stand alone in terms of major animal welfare cities not piloting it. And it's our hope to bring more of the Human Animal Support Services work to Austin, but the national work stands alone, but it draws, the heart of it is all coming from Austin. And so the future of Austin Pets Alive matters. We can't teach students if we don't have a place to teach them. We can't show people how to save these animals if we don't have a place to save them. And so what happens next is critical to the national work, and it will carry on regardless, but APA remains really such an important piece of it.
And I'd add something to that, Kristen. I think that what's happening right now in Austin is actually pretty paramount to what's happening nationally, because Austin has been the leader in no-kill. The government shelter is still as we just talked about, 10 years of no-kill, highest live release rate in the country. And I think what the rest of the industry understands now about Austin is that it's not being driven by the government. And so when we're trying to make systemic change about the shelter industry itself, we're not talking about the nonprofits that are out there doing work with donor funds. We're talking about all the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being sunk into government shelters, and they're not driving the progressive change away from this sort of institutionalized extermination of pets to really understanding that most Americans want animals to live that go to shelters, and the governments hold the key to that. They're the ones that are making those decisions with how much they spend on life saving and how they prioritize life saving. And so when Austin is not leading that charge, it actually hurts. It hurts the work we're trying to do and we're trying to promote with changing the system when our own community is not embracing that change. And our community is embracing no-kill. Our community, the people, love no-kill, and our government loves no-kill, but the system itself is broken, and it's functioning at a level that is way behind the rest of large cities across America, even across Texas, which is pretty bad. So what we're pushing for right now is very painful, and a lot of it doesn't even seem probably pretty obvious on the surface, but we're pushing for Austin government to improve the way it functions for animals and to create a sustainable system with or without APA that will make sure that animals live in our community, because that's what's important to the citizens of Austin. And we have the city shelter has the highest budget in the country, and the rest of the country knows that. And so when they see that Austin Pets Alive is taking 20 to 30% of the animals from the Austin Animal Shelter for no funds, none of that money is coming to Austin Pets Alive. It makes them think it's not possible in their own community to do the work as a government entity. And that's not what we want to set up. That we're not even telling people to set up Austin Pets Alive type organizations anymore, because it backfires. We have what Kristen was talking about, the Human Animal Support Services Project. We have all these governments that have raised their hand and said, we want to make systemic change in our community, and we're going to do it as the government. And yes, we're looking for partners, but we're not going to be heavily relying on one nonprofit raising donor funds to do the heavy lifting. Maybe part of it, maybe there's the part with the animals that are actually slated for euthanasia, but that number should be dwindling every year if a government is making progress, right? So if Austin's going to be the leader, which is one of our key parts of making of our strategic plan, is truly making Austin embody the leadership role that everybody has thought for so long it has. And it's also tenuous. It's got to get fixed. So the TLAC, the land itself is sort of a red herring because it's just a piece of property, but the mechanics of the relationship that we have with the city to occupy that land has made us a crutch for the government to not look at itself and say, what do we need to do to reflect the values of our community?
Well,
Hopefully I didn't get too out there. It's a complicated subject.
you touched a little bit on what your vision is for the next few years, but the preponderance of questions are about the land issue and TLAC. So let's go ahead and dive in and not make people wait for that. If people want to pick up, they can. Otherwise, there's a bunch of questions in the chat, but tie it into where we want to go.
Sure. Is there a specific question? I'm having trouble watching the chat and talking.
One of them is, what is the likelihood or the probability of item 38 being passed by City Council?
And Katie may be able to share some of this. And I think I saw Susie on here too. Susie just came over from Councilmember Poole's office to join our team, 6 months ago, something like that. So she has a lot of insider knowledge of how the offices work. I think it's pretty good. I think that it's got a very good chance of passing. It's only a portion of what we asked for in our APA resolution. So my only word of caution is that while we need to work really hard to get this resolution passed and make sure the council members know we want it to be passed, we need to be cognizant that there's more that we need to do to kind of actually fix the problems. This will fix one big piece of it, which is the restriction that they have placed on us to artificially lower our capacity to help other communities, which then kind of creates a system where they think that it makes the system where it forces us to keep doing a lot of the work that they're charged with doing and that they have the budget to do. So it fixes that at least, but it still doesn't solve for the number of animals and the percentage of animals that we take from Austin Animal Center in exchange for the TLAC property. As you know, the TLAC property has been shrunk down to only about a third or a quarter of the space that we were told we were getting when we 5 years ago, when we were so gung-ho to start a capital campaign and start rebuilding. That was all because we knew that we had this property that we could build on. And then it turned out that what we knew was not true at all, and we weren't able to actually build. And so the number of animals, it really does need to be contingent on that property and the size that we have and the space where we're able to occupy in exchange, quote unquote, in exchange. The irony is that we are going to save every animal that is slated to die at Austin Animal Center for no money and for no land. We'll do it all. That's our job. That's our mission. We're not going to let any animal die on our watch in Austin. But when we're thinking about a long-term agreement, 75-year agreement with the city of Austin, it needs to reflect the true value of what that property is. And when we have to pay for the entire demolition of the site, the 3.5 acres, and we'll have to raise all that money, and we'll have to raise the money to build, which is our understanding twice as expensive and takes twice as long than building on private property. So it's not exactly a free ride that we're getting to stay there. The location is amazing. Obviously, we love it, and we believe the history of the shelter being there for 70 years is really important. But we need to keep that all in perspective. And so when we know that for every 1,000 animals that the city of Austin has us take for them costs us $1 million in donated funds, then we need to keep that in perspective. If we have a property, I personally believe that it's worth, what we'd be getting would be worth about $1 million of us subsidizing the city's budget to save the animals that they're not able to. So that would mean 1,000. Right now we're taking, between 2,500 and 3,500 every year. And like I said, we'll keep doing that, but we want the contractual ability to be able to push every year and say, you need to get this number down. You need to get this number down. What are you doing to get this number down? What are you doing to help yourself to not have all these animals on the euthanasia list? And if we're in an open-ended contract, then we can't do that. We can't drive any kind of change forward.
And we believe that number is artificially high, right? Because Austin Animal Center is sending us animals that truly they could save. They have the resources to save them, but they're just sending them our way and treating us like overflow instead of sending us the animals that truly need our specialized programs.
If I could just add one thing, I got to work at Austin Animal Center and also a number of other shelters, and this is a unique problem in that when I worked at Austin Animal Center, we would send really easy pets to Austin Pets Alive, primarily because our team just didn't really want to deal with them, pets with ringworm or mange or simple upper respiratory infections. And so those animals really don't need to be coming to Austin Pets Alive. And also there, as Dr. Jefferson mentioned, there isn't another system like this. And if any other shelter, open admission shelter director worked in a community where some organization was willing to take any number of their difficult pets, they would be just bowing over backwards to try to do whatever they could to support them, because it's so unusual that anyone would help you with tough animals. By and large, rescue groups and humane societies take the easier pets. And so it's a really huge, even at a smaller number, it's a huge gift that we are able to give to this community. I think that Austin Pets Alive is able to give to this community that isn't happening other places.
And could you explain how that gets in the way of what we consider to be our mission, Ellen?
Sure, I can see other people unmuting too, so I'll say it briefly and then open it up to Tracy and Tom. It gets in the way of our mission because our mission is to eliminate the killing of pets in shelters. And so when we're doing work that has already been funded by the government for a different entity to do, and then we're doing it just because we're here, and that is a duplication of effort. It's a duplication. It's a waste of, frankly, y'all's money, because you're donating to help us help animals. And if it's just duplicating funds that have already been allocated in the city's budget, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do that too. And it takes away our bandwidth to be able to focus on why animals are dying, why, even thinking about the hardest group of animals to save, which are big dogs with behavioral challenges and trauma that they've had in the past. Any minute that we are spending on animals that don't have those kinds of difficulties is minutes that aren't being spent on trying to really solve for those root issues and for why, what we could be doing differently and thinking about differently for dogs that end up in kennels for years and sometimes never get placed in homes because they get euthanized for behavior. Those are really challenging problems. And if we're focused on just doing busy work that's already funded, then it really limits our ability to think about these more complex problems and really try to get to the root of why even we're still not able to solve for 100% of those.
This is Tracy. It really makes me angry when I hear about, I really have not been aware of, the fact that the city of Austin is not pulling their weight. I mean, they have that beautiful shelter that they built a number of years ago. And from the outside, it looks like they're doing all the right things because Austin is such a great place for animals and it is a large no-kill city. But and I like to be involved with Austin Pets Alive. I like to contribute, but I've been totally unaware, and it makes me believe that there are so many other people in this whole city that are totally unaware of how the city of Austin is taking advantage of Austin Pets Alive. And I really believe we need to shine a spotlight on this. I've never heard any of this in the news. I've never heard, and maybe this isn't the right time since we want this resolution passed in November, but I think we need to turn up the heat on them. They need to be have the spotlight on them to let the public know your tax dollars are going towards this, and yet they're not pulling their weight.
Yeah, it makes you think there's some deep-seated corruption going on there. I mean, where's the money going that they're not spending on the animals?
And I know Larry and Susie probably want to chime in, and Katie, maybe even Kristen, but I would say is the money is going to programs and animals. There just isn't a blueprint for governments. There's no template budget at all. That's one of the things we're working on in the Haas project for governments. From one city to another, there's absolutely zero consistency and standardization. Nobody has ever cared enough to make that how governments operate across the country. It's outrageous. So that's part of what we're working on nationally, is we believe that some of these underlying problems that create budgets that are pitiful. I'm in Marfa, Texas right now. There's one guy that runs the entire shelter. He has to drive around and pick up animals. He has to feed them. He has to clean them. He has to do adoptions. And no wonder he doesn't get very many of them placed. And he has no marketing support. That's outrageous. A government in Marfa that's making tons of money on Austinites coming to visit. What the heck is going on? And it's because nobody can even advocate, because there's no norm to advocate for, right? Like, he doesn't know what to advocate for. The citizens don't know what to advocate for. Nobody knows. So if we can create some understanding around those things, then it'll help at the high end and the very low end to keep things hopefully in check. Sorry, Larry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay, I'm used to it. Usually Ellen tells me to stop talking, not ask me for my, I'm teasing. My take, Tracy, when you were talking, I was like, yep, thinking, yeah, that's right. We need to hold them accountable. Susan, you too. My perception is I was on the Animal Advisory Commission and for 12 years. It was the chair that responsible for creating the no-kill plan for the city of Austin. And it was a long process, like 28 weeks. And what I see with the current Chief Animal Services Officer at the city shelter is that we knew during the process, after the city manager was hired and started the hiring process, we were applying pressure for him to hire somebody, get somebody in this critical role. The Chief Animal Services Officer is one of the 3 most important positions within the city of Austin, equally as important as the Chief of Police and the Fire Chief. But this new city manager, when hired and started this process, eliminated and just destroyed the entire process that was created prior to that, which involved the community stakeholders, and put a large emphasis on that process, as Kristen can attest, because when Tommy Hammond was hired, we went to Fairfax, and we took a group there to the shelter to interview her. We spoke to Kristen, we spoke to other stakeholders in the community. But when this city manager came in, he eliminated that process or severely diminished it. When we saw the final candidates, we raised the red flags and said, these people are not qualified, and we were dismissed. And just the assistant city manager at that time in charge of that process was flippant and disrespectful and rude to community stakeholders and just very dismissive. And we got a bad chief. We got a really bad chief animal services officer. He's not very smart. He's lazy. He pushes the responsibility onto Austin Pets Alive. And he does absolutely need to be held accountable. Tracy, that's a great question. Where the hell's the money going? I don't think it's being allocated properly, but he also doesn't provide reports that are mandatory for him to provide as part of a council mandate. There are just so many things that are really wrong that are happening. He doesn't follow the no-kill plan, and he just pushes it off onto Austin Pets Alive and wants Austin Pets Alive to do the work. And he does need to be held accountable, and that's the next challenge. After APA's contract is signed on November 4th, all attention needs to shift, the momentum needs to accelerate, and there needs to be pressure and accountability put on the city. That's my take.
I would agree with you. And Austin being so pet friendly as a community, I think you would have a ton of support behind pushing, the city to be accountable. We just need to get the word out. It really needs to be a campaign. And if pressure is put on the city to step up and do what they're supposed to do, I think we could definitely get some movement there. But I think it's really about informing the community, informing the public more so, because like I said, until I got these emails about the Town Lake Animal Center, I really was totally unaware. I still feel like I'm kind of in the dark just on as far as what's in the resolution, et cetera. But I just know that so many people are totally unaware of this. They really had no idea that APA is pulling all the weight for Austin, and the city of Austin's getting a lot of credit for stuff that they're not doing that they should be doing. So.
Any other questions or comments on that? I could literally talk about it all day, so I don't want to just talk y'all's ear off.
Why don't you talk about the land and why we're already looking for land even before we get the city's decision?
Okay. Yes. We know that the land that we're currently on at TLAC is a lot smaller than what we're currently using. It'll be about a quarter of this. Whatever we build will be about a quarter of the buildings that we currently have. So very, very small compared to what we're used to and how we operate. And so as we're thinking about what to do with that, and it's only been during COVID that we got final answers from the city about the land restrictions. We've spent years working on trying to, seeing if this will work. Will this work? Could we remodel what's existing because it's already grandfathered in? Could we, kind of going down all these paths until just being told no about everything. We finally have accepted that our fate is not going to be rebuilding everything at TLAC, which is okay. So now we are thinking about what we could do with a very small portion of it, and recognizing that it probably will not be where we have our behavior center, because that takes, in order to do it right for the dogs, as we've been trying to plan with architects for, while we were anticipating being able to get to the 75-year agreement and rebuild, they really need to be spread out and to have a lot less stress with so many people touching them and so many other dogs in close proximity, and having bigger quarters to live in And so in a much more volunteer-friendly environment, TLAC is hard on volunteers for dog walking because it's it's hard. It's just everything's right there, and it's not walking dogs is not taking dogs to the park. Generally, it's getting the dogs out of their kennel long enough to potty and then putting them back in. And so it's not a great experience. And what we're hoping for, one of the very first things we're looking for land is a space that's at least 3 acres to build kennels in the behavior center. And kennels being a kind of a broad term because we expect them to be more like, I don't know what a good example is, luxury boarding size, not luxury boarding, but big enough where they actually have enough room to get around. People can be in their kennels with them and spread out. And so we believe 3 acres will accomplish that. And we are we'd like to keep it within 15 to 20 minutes of current TLAC, if at all possible. That's proving to be incredibly challenging because of the real estate market right now. And we're sending out a poll to our volunteers and staff this week. I'm not sure if it's gone out yet, but to just find out if people would even follow us if we got further than 15 minutes away, so that we can know what to expect. And so, but it doesn't really matter if that's in the city limits or not. Probably needs to be outside of any kind of neighborhood area, because we've run into problems in the past looking at other property where the neighborhoods have voted down the ability to build kennels. You typically need a neighborhood vote in order to get kennels built. So that's property number 1. The rest really depends on what happens with Town Lake. So if we spread everything out, we'd be looking at 4 different properties. The second one would be a veterinary clinic, medical clinic, which we do believe needs to be very central and close to. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that, Melissa. We feel like it needs to be close to our foster base. Every single animal that we care for touches the clinic at least once, often multiple times. And so if we're asking people to take animals in, sometimes sight unseen, we need to be accessible to them to be able to treat if all of a sudden they got diarrhea on your hands or something that is not what you expected. So we believe that one needs to be very central, and it could be as small as 3,500 square feet building, and but at least 15 parking spaces, as long as we can access parking close by, other parking close by for people coming in for appointments. The third property is adoption. We were thinking that maybe we could get away without having an adoption center because of COVID and having, our adoptions have skyrocketed during COVID when we were closed to the public. But there is something, especially for our big dogs, there's something about being able to see them and interact with them that makes them more adoptable, more easily adopted, I should say. And so we're looking at what that might be, whether it's a small property with indoor kennels, so we don't have to get that neighborhood vote, or part of another property that is, again, central, somewhere where there's lots of people who can touch it. So it doesn't have to be downtown, but we'd like it to be central. And then the fourth property is around transport and holding. So being able to say yes to animals often requires a kennel for them to land in quickly, to get off that euthanasia list, and then immediately go to foster, or sometimes, as Kristen said, sometimes across the country to a different community that is having a shortage of a type of animal. And so we need a space that could accommodate that, but that doesn't have to be connected to anything else that we're doing. So those are the 4 spaces. It's yet to be determined. We know behavior will not be at Town Lake because of the room that's needed. The other 3 might be a toss-up or a mix that we might be able to do some at Town Lake, depending on what happens on the 4th and after. Any specific questions about that? We could jump into land if y'all want. Or Maggie, if you had any quite preset questions on that.
No, I think you covered everything. I was going to make sure that you covered.
I could say timeline. We are looking at, we are actually in the process of putting offers in on properties because they move so fast. As soon as we find something, they're gone. And that gives us time to do our due diligence and make sure that things are zoned correctly and that, you know, we're able to build potentially. Ideally, we're looking for properties that already have buildings. When we were looking at rebuilding everything at Town Lake, the architects were giving us estimates of $20 to $30 million, which was completely overwhelming. And that's why the capital campaign was also very overwhelming thought and what we were gearing up for. If we cobble together properties, we're thinking, and Germana, feel free to jump in on this, but we're thinking that it's probably going to be somewhere around the 10 to 12 million range instead, if we were to purchase everything. There is also the possibility of renting different properties, but the problem with that is that raises our operational expenses every month. And that's just more money that we have to raise on an ongoing basis in addition to the money to save the animals. And so we're trying to steer clear of that if we can. And it also gives us some sustainability if we purchase property, gives us equity that has, you know, kind of keeps building Austin Pets Alive up as more sustainable for the future for generations, hopefully.
Yeah, I would just add that as insane as the real estate market is right now in Austin, and as a result, also in the surrounding areas, the land committee that we pulled together has just been assessing each property as they come in. And then, as Ellen mentioned, we at that point have to look at the size and the location and the accessibility to our staff of volunteers and try and weigh that against our needs and kind of go from there. But roughly, yeah, we have been thinking somewhere in the 10 to 12 million, which is still a sizable saving from the original budget that we were looking at for TLAC. Will get us to where we need to go. But the situation is literally changing daily. So we're not quite sure where we'll end up, but that is the goal.
Yeah, and we should say that a lot of the land we're looking at has existing buildings on it that could be easily converted to our use. So it's not like we have to build everything.
Yeah, we're hopeful that there will be just some remodeling necessary for some of these key needs so that we could really get the most that we can for our money.
Looks like Amy has a hand raised. Amy, if you want to jump on.
Yes, hi, thank you. I was just curious, talking about the 4 different types of locations that you're looking at, is the Windsor Road space not available anymore?
No, it is. That's a really good question. It is. And so we have our small dog adoption center there and our cat adoptions and our nursery at the Tarrytown facility. The dog facility doesn't really accommodate large dogs very well. And that's really the biggest piece we're missing is the ability to have large dog adoptions. And so that's, you know, I think we could certainly talk to her more, the landlord there, more about renovating those spaces, but the dog one is not very big. So I'm not sure, there's no more room over there for more spaces, but she's committed to us staying, and certainly we're extremely appreciative of that. It's a wonderful facility, a wonderful adoption facility.
Yes, okay. Great. Well, I was curious. Okay, you said 10 to 12 million estimate for purchasing of Optimal. What was the budget for TLAC? I heard mentioned that the 10 to 12 is much less. Well, what was the budget for TLAC?
The architects had given us a range from 20 to 30 million. And sometime, I mean, depending on, I mean, that was to be able to build the behavior outfit like we wanted to, the clinic like we wanted to, the ability to have adoptions there, kind of the same number of kennels that we have right now, which is 200 kennels at TLAC, huge facility. And the good news is we don't need 200 kennels, even if we had the whole property there. We know we don't need 200 kennels anymore. But yeah, that was what we were starting to try to put all the pieces together to finally be able to launch a capital campaign. We never launched it And those numbers weren't even shared really publicly because we didn't get to the place where we signed a 75-year agreement with the city where we could rebuild everything at TLAC, which was the holdup for being able to move forward with the capital campaign.
Got it. Okay. Well, yes, that is a huge difference. Okay. Thank you very much.
I wanted to make sure that we answered Bob and Kathy's question. Good. Okay. So we were gonna do, if everybody has finished questions on this, and we're all available for further questions, by phone or email as well. It's major preoccupation in our minds. There's lots of planning going along. Things are changing day to day, but we're always willing to talk about it if you have more questions. But we were gonna do a really quick review of our finances. Brittany has some slides, and I was going to talk you very quickly through a very high-level picture of where we are.
I do. All right. One moment. I will share my screen. Take it away, Maggie.
Right. So we wanted, since you guys are some of our really important investors, we always want to make sure we're being really transparent about our finances. And basically, we're proud to be transparent about them. We're pretty proud of where we are. This is a really quick 5-year snapshot view of the last 5 years. And there's 3 things you should note about this. One is the earned revenue, which is the orange block on the top of each of the bars. Since 2017, we've been trying to not be so overly dependent on philanthropy alone and to diversify our income into earned revenue. And that's been very successful. That comes primarily from our thrift stores. And we even managed to make our way through 2020 when they were closed for a good part of the year and maintain that income. But that income is largely there to replace the funds that we got during Harvey. For those of you who weren't around in 2017 was a major turning point in our history. We brought in several $1 million over what we needed in 2017 because of our response to Hurricane Harvey, which hit the international news, and the donations just poured in because we really captured the minds and hearts of people with our response to that disaster. The second thing you should notice is that yellow line of the expenses, and it looks almost as if we're operating in the red when you just glance at that, but it's not true. The money that we brought in during 2017 from Hurricane Harvey and from a $4.4 million grant from Maddie's Fund for American Pets Alive and our training academy was meant to be spent down over the next 3 to 4 years, and that's what we've done. Meanwhile, in those 3 to 4 years, we've been raising our fundraising capacity. So we're still, we're not just letting that fund disappear and not replace it. We are fundraising at a much higher level. The third thing is that dramatic rise in spending in 2021. And that is planned. That is part of our strategic plan. If you go to the next slide, Brittany. Right. So this is the breakdown of our fundraising against program expenses. And we are still well within nonprofit best practices that say that you should be spending at least 70% of your income on programs. You'll see that we raised that percentage quite a bit in 2021, and that was the plan. It's part of our strategic plan to grow because we know we have an outsized influence on life-saving in shelters. And the additional spending that we're doing are in 3 ways. One is to build our sustainability. And we're doing that by bringing in a bigger executive team to really drive that growth that we're seeing both in Austin and across the country. So things like our new policy director, who's critically important because as hard as we work on the ground, if there are policies put in place that get in our way, it sort of negates what we're trying to do. Those law and policy are powerful influencers over what happens with animal welfare. The other is that we're building succession plans. For years, we have been overly dependent on a really tiny leadership team, and especially Dr. Jefferson. And so we're recognizing that that was a risk and that we should build more of a succession plan. And last, we've been building our philanthropy team. We're spending quite a bit more on fundraising because we front loaded our need to raise a lot more money in the coming years for the capital campaign that's coming up, for the land purchases, for the growth that we are expecting. But we're still well within nonprofit best practice on how we spend money. Next slide, Brittany. So here on the left, that's a breakdown of our income, and that's actually a really interesting pie chart, because when we were primarily a local rescue, the majority of our money came only from individual donations. We were really dependent on thousands and thousands and thousands of people donating small donations, and then a very important subset of people who gave us larger gifts. But we added the 24% of earned income to diversify our income. But what's really exciting about this pie chart is that this is showing how we're changing. The American Pets Alive funding comes primarily from really big grants that were not available to us as a local rescue. So we often get people worrying that American Pets Alive is competing with APA, but it's not. It's actually boosting our ability to bring in much bigger sums of money. Right now, Kristen can tell you, the world is so excited that the people who are associated with animal welfare, both in the for-profit world and the nonprofit world, are so excited about the Human Animal Support Services movement and the work that we do through American Pets Alive, that they are coming to us and asking us how to support it. And they have the ability to give in the 6 and 7 figures, whereas a really big gift on the APA side is rarely that big. And then on the right, you can see a lot about how we spend money. Our expenses are pretty even through the year, but in contrast, our revenue comes in a very irregular pattern, and it's all due to external factors. No matter how hard we work on fundraising, we cannot raise a ton of money in the summer. And usually there's a pause in fundraising in the first quarter of the year because there is so much giving at the end of the previous year. So if you go to the next slide, Brittany, this is our typical pattern for fundraising. And this is for operations only. This does not include our American Pets Alive income. You can see we are really dependent on what happens at the end of the year. We raise something like 40% of our income in November, December, which makes us bite our nails. And we start planning for that campaign as early as August, because it is so important to us. But that money in December is what carries us through in the months when we have bigger expenses than we have revenue. So we're able to maintain our staff. We don't have layoffs. We're able to maintain our life saving because of that ability to raise so much at the end of the year. Next slide, Brittany. Now this is a 5-year snapshot of our assets. They look like they're going down dramatically. That is because we were spending down the Academy grant from 2017 and the Harvey Fund from 2017. We were required to do that. That was restricted money. We've had people commenting sometimes that we seem to have a lot of money in the bank, but that is not money that we can use freely. It is restricted to American Pets Alive through grants. It is restricted through a few other grants we have that have very specific purposes, or it was the Harvey Fund, and we had to use that to help communities in East Texas that had long-term effects from Harvey. But we're still incredibly financially healthy. We currently have, I think, more than 4 months of spending in reserve. That is meeting best practices. It is part of our strategic plan to always maintain a really healthy reserve. The reserve fund is for a rainy day, but it's also what allows us to contemplate growth and sustainability. And it's also what allows us to take a few risks now and then, because risk will sometimes give us a big, big payoff, but you can't do that. You can't take those risks unless you're very financially healthy. So overall, we are in great shape financially. So you can be confident that if you are investing in APA, that we are using your funding well, and we are maintaining really great management practices. So that's it. Questions are welcome. We can go backwards on the slides if anyone has questions. There's nothing in the chat. I know that's a lot drier than talking about vision, but thank you, Susan. So we can close the evening out by asking financial questions or any questions.
Someone has to have a burning question.
What a way to bring it out.
Hey, as people are returning to offices now that some of the companies, you know, are bringing people back in, boo, hiss, I don't like it, but are we seeing people having to do anything different with their pets? Is it, you know, are people having to come return pets or anything? Have we
Kristen,
talked-
national research.
Yeah, I was going to have Kristen comment on that nationally. We're not seeing that locally.
Great.
Interestingly, there's no data locally or nationally to show that pandemic puppies are being returned that were adopted or rescued from shelters. There is some evidence, and we don't really know why, that pets that were purchased may be being returned in larger numbers, the purchase from breeders and pet stores. I just learned that yesterday, but as far as shelters and rescues, people are hanging on to their pets, and people are continuing to adopt and rescue. I just wanted to tell you one quick story before we lose you tonight, which is that I was on a phone with the reporter a couple of weeks ago about something different, and they asked about Austin Pets Alive. And I told them about the Puppies and Wheelies event, where our wheelchair dogs are all brought into a they like go into their own little dog show, and it's really cute because like they know they're like showing off these little weird wheelchair dogs, and that everyone thinks they're beautiful, which they've probably never experienced. But I was telling her about it, and this national reporter just burst into tears, and she couldn't even believe that that an organization would save these animals, much less celebrate them. And I think that idea that we're not just saving these animals, but we're showing like how profoundly meaningful they are to people and how special each one is. That's what keeps me going every day. I think it's what keeps our team going every day. And again, thank you for making it possible for us to do this work, because gosh, it's a good way to spend a life, saving these guys and showing the world how amazing they are.
Yeah, and we're coming up on a really, really big milestone. We are going to very soon reach our 100,000th animal saved, which is just an astonishing number of pets.
We'll have to make puppy cupcakes or doggy cupcakes for everybody that's there.
Yeah, if we don't have much more, we just are so grateful to everyone here, and I appreciate the comments. Melissa, thanking everybody as well. This work is so important, and you know, if anything, hopefully this gave you a kind of an overview of how overlooked this world of charity is, and that every dollar you spend and every hour you donate really makes a huge difference to the animals that have nowhere to go, that fall through all the gaps. And that's exactly why we focus on them, to make sure that they are saved here, and then the system is created so they're saved everywhere. And we can't do it without you, and the animals wouldn't be here without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Ellen, do we want to close with reminding people to write to their council members if they haven't already?
Good idea. So yes, if everybody can please just write in, even if you don't live in the city of Austin, you can send a council email to all of council. We sent it in that last email that went out to, you should have received, and just ask them to vote yes for the APA resolution on the 4th. Could be that simple. And we are hopeful that that will pass, and we'll keep you posted on next steps after that. And yes, and Susie, do you want to say something quickly out loud?
Yes, thank you so much to everyone who's been so supportive during this process. And just so you know, your emails and phone calls to the council offices really do matter. This is the time over the next few days. If you can send an email to the mayor and the council members asking them to support agenda item number 38, they will be read by the council staff. They will be presented to the council members. And if you know which council district you live in, if you can make sure that you reach out to that particular council member, we sure would like it if you would let the sponsors of agenda item number 38 know that you appreciate them co-sponsoring this agenda item. And that includes council members Poole, Casar, Fuentes, the mayor, as well as just one more.
Kitchen.
Councilmember Kitchen, of course, how can I forget? So if you live in one of those districts, please let them know that you appreciate them co-sponsoring this very important agenda item. And if you live in one of the other districts, you know, we certainly want you to email, because we would love for Councilmember Tovo to hear that it is a priority in District 9, and for the people who volunteer, those who work, and those who support Austin Pets Alive to get the support of Councilmember Tovo, as well as Councilmember Alter, Councilmember Kelly, and Councilmember Renteria, and the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. And Tracy, you have your hand raised. You want to pop on?
Sure, thank you. I just wanted, is there a place that we can read what is on that agenda item or what the resolution says?
Absolutely. And I can send that to you directly in an email, Tracy, the language that is on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Great. And I think we linked to it in that last email that went out too, right? It goes to a city website that shows the exact language.
I'm yes, thank you. If you can send that, that will save me some moments. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we have just a few minutes left. Does anyone else have any last second questions they want to throw out there?
I'll be mischievous and say, should we start an email campaign to drive this Christopher Shorter out of town? Chief Animal Services
He
Officer.
already left town.
Yeah, that, so he was the assistant city manager. And there is a reason why we're not promoting that heavily to just replace the director, because the system that supports that director needs to be fixed, right? No matter who comes in that role.
That's
no
right.
matter what
It'll
their
just be another
degree is.
problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I know Larry would probably willingly lead the the charge on that.
Yeah, we need that fixed. Yeah.
Well, we will let you all know how it goes. There will be an email with this decision.
Thank you.
Well, have a wonderful night. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for spending the evening with Austin Pets Alive. We love you all. So yes, thank you so much for everything you do, for your compassion for the animals, for your generosity, for your advocacy. It's amazing.
Thanks for all the work y'all all are doing. It's incredible.
I'll stick around for the last 2 minutes, but feel free to log off as you're ready to go. But
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.